But now I want to bring in former CIA Director John Brennan. He's also an MSNBC senior national security analyst and intel analyst. Dr. Brennan, here is John Kelly in his own words speaking to the New York Times about Trump praising Hitler.
He commented more than once that, that Hitler did some good things too. And of course, if you know history, again, I think he's lacking in that. But if you know what Hitler was all about, it'd be pretty hard to make an argument that he did anything good.
Director Brennan, your reaction?
Well, John Kelly is one of the most accomplished, decorated, and respected flag officers of his generation. And I worked very closely with John Kelly over the years, a tremendously hardworking and dedicated American public servant and military officer. And I have no doubt whatsoever in my mind that John Kelly was accurately recounting the comments that Donald Trump was making. And as Congresswoman Edwards said, this is not surprising at all. We have seen this continuous pattern over the course of many years of Donald Trump endorsing individuals such as a Hitler, disparaging the U.S. military, advocating for fascism, which is what John Kelly said, that he is fascist. And just like Mark Milley, former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, who said that Donald Trump is fascist to the core, it just demonstrates that Donald Trump is not interested in promoting our democratic system and our values as Americans. And so therefore, I find it absurd and appalling that so many Americans are willing to just dismiss these comments. And the undecided voters that are still out there, I think they really need to take this into account. When you have individuals such as John Kelly and Mark Milley saying this about Donald Trump, is this the country that you want your children and grandchildren to grow up in? I certainly hope not.
It's not just John Kelly and Mark Milley. Let's take a look at all the former Trump officials who have spoken out against Trump. It's Mike Pence, James Mattis, John Bolton, Rex Tillerson, Mark Esper, H.R. McMaster, Bill Barr, Nikki Haley. This list goes on and on and on, some of them calling Trump a threat to democracy itself. We literally ran out of space to fit all the comments here. How do you make sense of it? A lot of these are national security and military folks. They're worried enough by what they experienced inside the Trump administration that they are now speaking out against Trump, but they aren't going so far as to say that they would vote for Harris.
Well, yes, I find that rather not surprising, but unconscionable on their part, because they know that if they are not going to support Kamala Harris and vote for her, this is something that's going to benefit Donald Trump. And all those individuals that you showed on the screen, these were people who thought that they could keep Donald Trump on track, but they saw up close and personal that his actions, his private comments and decisions were very much consistent with a lot of the rhetoric that we're hearing from him, which again is so inconsistent with what our country has stood for over the course of time. And whether it be on the national security front, the foreign affairs front, or the domestic policy front, I think there's strong worry on the part of individuals who actually worked with him, with Donald Trump in the White House or in his cabinet or in his administration, who know that he is determined to carry out an agenda here that is really going to undermine the principles of this great country of ours. So again, the people who, that's why I give great credit to a person like Liz Cheney, who is conservative to the core, who I disagree with on a number of policy areas, but she has the integrity and the intestinal fortitude and the courage to stand up publicly and to say that Donald Trump is not just incompetent and unfit to run for president of the United States, but also he is somebody who presents a real and imminent danger to this country.
At the top of this segment, we heard from the vice president saying that her team is preparing for Trump to try and claim victory prematurely on election night. On the campaign trail, Trump's already laying the groundwork for questioning this year's election results. Do you think the election denial risk is bigger now than even in 2020?
Yes, I do. And I think the Trump campaign has an army of lawyers who are poised, especially in the key battleground states, to challenge election results if Trump falls short at the ballot box. And this is not going to be like in 2020, where Rudy Giuliani was running this ragtag team of lawyers. I think these are going to be very, very competent, sophisticated lawyers who are going to do everything possible to make those claims of fraud stick in the courts. And so I am concerned and worried about the legal challenges that will arise and how it's going to make its way to the courts. And I do think that the Republicans and Donald Trump are hoping to be able to bring this to the Supreme Court, believing that they maybe get a sympathetic ear there in terms of how the findings and the rulings are going to come out in his favor.